Hi, I'm Tania Rizoski from YourSanctuary Space, and I'm about to be on the Online Prosperity Show, where I'll be sharing with you my story about moving from corporate through burnout and into a completely new space that is about my purpose and journey and helping women to create the lives that they want.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premium destination for exclusive insights into the journeys of remarkable entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got a truly inspiring guest whose, I think her story embodies transformation and resilience. Now, Tania, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Prosper. Thank you. And thank you for having me on your show. I'm very excited.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. I mean, your life story and your experience and what it is that you're doing now is a book in the making in and of itself. And I just can't wait to share this, with our audience today. So thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. And you get the reference.
I do. Thank you.
Fantastic. And for those that are watching right now, I just want you to imagine dedicating nearly 3 decades to the corporate world. And, you're excelling in the roles and doing everything else that's supposed to be done, climbing whatever ladders that they put in front of you, from executive assistant to like general manager of, the companies that she's worked in, and only to realize that all this relentless hustle is just taking a toll on your well-being. And I think that happens to a lot of us. But, our guest today, she actually also faced that crossroad, after she completed her M.E.D.I.A. in her mid-40s. And she actually experienced what they call adrenal fatigue, and that was in 2022. So much was happening during that time. Australia had just gone through the pandemic, and you can imagine everybody had just been given marching orders to stay at home, and we're now just sort of getting back on our feet. And that then happened to Tania. So she went on a journey of self-discovery and healing, and this path then led her to establish YourSanctuary Space, which is a holistic wellness business that's dedicated to empowering women through Reiki, life coaching, and also just transformative retreats. And we're going to be hearing all about that today. But before we dive into this whole remarkable transformation, let's just start with, something that's near and dear to Tania. Now, Tania, while I was looking you up, I couldn't help but notice that your love for Elvis Presley is, got you to visit Graceland on your honeymoon.
It did.
Wow.
And look, I don't know. I don't exactly know where the love of Elvis started. Maybe, watching some shows when I was younger, some of his movies on TV. I don't know. I just really resonated with his music, and the love of Elvis just grew from there, I think.
Absolutely. So much that you wanted to make it a part of your own existence. I mean, that is some love. Now, I got a question. Do you often maybe find yourself channeling the king of rock and roll while you're inspiring, women to reclaim their inner power? I'm just asking for a friend here.
Oh, look, I can't say I've considered that before, but you never know. You never know. I'll have to pay more attention.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, Tania, you've had 3 decades in the corporate space, and that then got you to where you are. Tell us a little bit about that journey and what it looked like while you were inside.
Yeah. So thank you. I think For me, I just want to take it back a little bit in terms of my background. So my background is Macedonia, and in how I grew up, and a lot in our culture, success can look like getting a good job. Well, that's a key part of it, I think. And also for women in particular, it's around the success in the household and with your family and looking after your family. So I think when I first left school, I hadn't really thought about what a career as such might look like for me. It was just find a job, get married, have kids, and look after your family. And I grew up, I'm in Sydney now, but I grew up down south in a smaller sort of community. And when I got married, I moved up to Sydney because my husband's from here. And that just really opened my eyes. Like the opportunities up here versus what I had growing up was incredible. And I think that then started triggering for me that maybe it's not just about family and kids. There is other things that I can do. So I was lucky enough to start working in quite a large organisation, and I started off in a data entry finance role, but moved through to some other roles during my time there, and that really even more so started opening my eyes as to what opportunities were out there. And I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do as a career, but I had 2 kids at that time as well, so I had to look at, with what I was doing, balancing out, having to look after two young children as well as, all the stuff that goes on in the household and with your family. I decided to move into a personal assistant career. I tried that a little bit in the organisation that I was with, and I thought, I actually don't mind this. Let me see how I go with that. And I then moved into another organisation and then just slowly started to look at next steps in that as a career. And but also having to balance out the working full time with looking after my family. Excuse me. And there was a lot of balance there because, again, coming back to the Macedonian background, the woman being the career woman as part of the household isn't the typical thing. It's not what you'd see. So there was a lot of pressure on me to, even though I was starting to move up in my career, of making everything at home look like it was all working and fine and it was all good, and I wasn't under any pressure and all of that stuff. So that I continued doing things that way for quite a while, actually, not letting on to people that there may have been pressures going on at home, or just balancing that whole corporate life with being a mum. And I continued that. I ended up in the last organisation I was working for. I started off as an executive assistant for the CEO. Within 12 months, the CEO at that time had left and a new CEO came on board. And, for me, in the back of my mind, I always thought there's something else I want to be doing. I just wasn't sure what that was yet. And when he approached me and said, look, I think you need to be doing more. And I went, okay. And he offered, he was doing a restructure in the organisation, which, as you know, a lot of CEOs, when they come on board, do things like that. And he offered me a management role looking after the membership team. It was completely out of the blue. It wasn't an area that I had thought I would go into. So for me at that time as well, I was sitting there going, I didn't feel like I was finished in my EA career at that point, but I knew this was a fantastic opportunity. And I had a quote from Richard Branson in my head, something like, if you get an opportunity, say yes and figure out how you're going to do it later. So I thought I can't let this go. So I said yes. But what I also did at that point was I kept my foot in the door from the EA space. So I was managing the CEO office, as well as taking over the membership, learning about membership, managing the membership team at the time. So, again, trying to understand what that looks like. So I had my foot in two camps, still in the EA space, but now I'm moving into a management space. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? So, if I'd had my time to do it again, I would have just moved straight into that management role and allowed myself the space to just focus purely on that. But there's a learning, I think, in everything, in every choice that we make. So for me, that was particularly a stressful time, massive learning, which I'm so grateful for, but a lot of stress. And then, so that was 2017 when I got that opportunity. 2019, I got the opportunity to move then into a general manager role, moving completely out of the EA space and now part of the leadership team, next level again. And that's when I really understood the difference between managing and leading as well. I started to understand that. And not long after I moved into that role, I recognized that if I wanted to do this as a career move after leaving this particular organization, I needed to get some sort of degree behind me, because the people I'd be competing with for roles were degree qualified. I'd never done any level of study like that. I'd done courses and some TAFE things, in my younger years, but never anything at that level. And so I started my MBA in mid-2019, and then the pandemic hit in early 2020. So, yeah, that was an interesting time, to say the least. And also what happened in mid-2020 was my mother was diagnosed with a serious illness, completely out of the blue. So here I was in my mid-40s, working in an extremely senior role, trying to navigate this pandemic, trying to manage staff who were really nervous and, as you can imagine, fearful as to what was going to happen with their jobs. What does this mean, particularly when we were all told we had to go and work from home? They were trying to balance their family lives. I was trying to balance my family life at home. My kids at that stage had just finished high school. The other one had finished his uni degree and had been planning to go and start finding a job, and that didn't happen because recruitment ceased everywhere. So I'm trying to manage them and their expectations and fears and concerns at home, trying to study my degree, work full time. My husband had a business, helping him out. And yeah, then mum got sick. So it was a lot. Wow. It was a lot. And yeah. And I think for me, looking back at it now too, it's just having gone through so much even before then, and that mindset that just keep doing it, suck it up. You can, just move forward. I was constantly in the doing, do, never. And now I can recognize it was a lot of autopilot. You're doing things on autopilot because there was no space at all to just stop and go, hang on a minute, what do I actually need right now? And looking after my well-being as well, you're just like a machine doing the next thing.
That was a candle burning from both ends. And it was only a matter of time. And thank you so much for taking us through all of that ordeal that you went through. Now, let's just go back a little bit. You see, you did mention growing up. You grew up in a small town, and obviously, you also did give us, that your heritage is Macedonian. Were there any sort of role models or people that you looked up to at that particular time? Because obviously, when you're growing up, you're very impressionable. You see certain things, and then you start seeing other people being and doing. And maybe if you think, were there any sort of mother role models or career women role models? You don't necessarily have to mention them, but I just wanted to see where you were seeing yourself moving ahead, especially at that young age.
Yeah. Not from a career perspective, there wasn't, because no one really did this. And that's where I think I also, now when I look back at it, I also realized that I was trying to make this move and shift into something different to what I was seeing around me.
Yeah.
While having, in the back of your mind or the back of your ear, that pressure of, but you need to be a really good mum and you need to focus on your family first and all of that stuff. And it does play on your mind, to be honest. And I can't even tell you what made me, I don't know, I just had this drive from somewhere to just go, despite what I'm hearing and despite what I'm not seeing around me, I'm going to do it anyway.
And now, obviously, you're creating something that obviously doesn't sort of have, a yardstick or a barometer of when you're going to arrive. And that just keeps you going, because at least if you can see someone, you'll be like, oh, at least she ended up at this level, and that sort of gives you some sort of reference point, and things like that. And then Sydney happened, where it was the big city, big smoke, and you can only imagine, small town girl trying to fit in. I can only see why the peddling increased.
Yeah. And look, I think for me, while I wasn't seeing the role models within my culture, I am lucky enough that I found mentoring and coaching from other women throughout any role that I did in my career, whether that was a PA role, the EA role, or even the management role. So once I started seeking the mentors in my early career and I saw the benefit of that, I made sure that whatever level I stepped into, I had someone there to support me, because it's lonely. It is lonely, and you can't do it all on your own.
Absolutely.
And you need the different perspectives from people.
I like that. And one of the things that you mentioned is, when you were offered the opportunity by the new CEO to go into management, you said yes to that. And usually when you say yes to something, you're also saying no to another thing. It's one of those things that's just how life has worked. I mean, and you did say hindsight, looking back at all of that, what were you saying no to?
My time and myself and my family, actually, as well. Because as you can imagine, it's, when you're working full time and you're then in that management role, while you might start at 8:30 or 9 in the morning, you're certainly not finishing at 5. And in the organisation that I was with, and just the volume of things that I had to do, I'd be lucky if I'd finish at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock some nights. And I think also for me, I had put some extra pressure on myself where I didn't want to work weekends. And I think that was one standard I had set for myself, that I would prefer to work longer hours during the week and have my weekends free to my family, rather than go home earlier during the week do things at home that I needed to do and then still work late at night, because I knew that, you know, once I got home, that was it. I didn't want to think about work. I wanted to focus my time on my family. And that's what was important for me. But I definitely did sacrifice a lot of time.
There's a time when I actually heard the kettle boiling until it popped. You'd gotten a senior role. Mom got diagnosed. You had to help your husband with the business. Kids were also trying to be figured out. You had taken on the M.E.D.I.A. and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine when you were in it, it felt normal, didn't it? Because fish don't see the water that they swim in.
Absolutely. Again, I was focused on the doing. I'm very task orientated, thankfully very organized. So I was able to structure my days to fit the maximum amount of stuff in. But yeah, you're paddling. Underwater, you're paddling outwardly. You know, I looked calm and collected and had everything together and was making it work. But what no one saw, including myself, is what was happening underneath all that.
Was there a feeling or an expectation that there were people to please, or there were people to keep, you know, who might have been keeping tabs on you, that you felt like this needed to happen come hell or high water?
Absolutely. And that, again, was part of my upbringing. So there were a couple of things there that I've now recognised. One, the people-pleasing, massive people-pleasing, you know, do things in a way that, and I guess it ties back to the people-pleasing, where your voice or your opinion is not necessarily as important as other people's if it goes against what someone else might be thinking. And I had committed to doing the M.E.D.I.A. I'd committed to doing certain things. And how was that going to look if all of a sudden I turn around and went, no, I'm not doing that anymore? And for myself, I had that mindset of, if I've said yes and I've committed to doing something, I'm going to do it, no matter what. You know, which sometimes can be to your detriment.
That's not the case anymore, Tania, right? When was that moment when you actually then realized that, you know what, this is not sustainable, and this whole traditional path is no longer fulfilling you? Take us there.
So that was in mid-2022. So I had finished my degree.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And probably a couple of things, you know, now that I think about it, while I had finished it and you feel this sense of accomplishment, it didn't last long. And it wasn't this overwhelming feeling of, wow, look at what I have done. Look at what I've achieved. And then the real fallout was 6 to 8 weeks, I think, after I had finished. But it was mentally and emotionally like completely drained. Things that excited you before didn't. You know, getting up in the morning was a massive effort. And I felt like during the day there were times where I literally could not keep my eyes open. And I'm not a person who goes and stops to take a nap in the afternoon. I go once I'm up and out and doing things, I go. And I remember at times I'd be sitting at my desk in the study, and I felt like I needed to put toothpicks or something under my eyelids to keep my eyelids open. And there were times where I just had to go and take 10 or 15 minutes and go and lie down. I just couldn't keep going. And I just, after a while, I went, what is this? What is this? And I had to go and see my doctor, and I explained to her what was going on. And she said, I did blood tests and all sorts of things to rule out other stuff, and everything came back clear. And it was interesting, actually, because she had said to me, look, you won't normally hear this from a doctor, but given the fact that of everything you've explained to me, and I've known you for a while, I think you've got adrenal fatigue, and, which is part of burnout, right? And I just went, wow. I just thought I could just keep going and going. But that was the massive catalyst for me to stop and start looking at what it was that I had been doing to cause this and what I needed to do to heal. Yeah.
You see, there's stages of grief, especially when you get information like that, you accept, and then you come to terms with it, and maybe you try and bargain, and then obviously then, figure it out and stuff like that. What was your recourse when you, in the car park, you've been told you're burning out on your way home?
Yeah, look, I have to say, it was a bit of a shock. Apologies, my dog is growling
it would
in
have
the background. It was a shock, and it was hard to admit it to myself.
Okay.
And even for a period of time to admit it to others. And to be perfectly honest, I think there was a little bit of shame around it. And from a work perspective, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anyone. I just did what I had to do and what I could do. And thankfully, we were working from home still at that time. So I was lucky enough where I could take breaks during the day if I needed to, feeling tired. And I could adjust some of the things that I was doing without really allowing others to see that and be vulnerable around it. I did end up obviously telling my immediate family, but I certainly didn't tell people around me. And again, given what my mum had been going through and was still going through at the time, she's one of I'm going to say she's my best friend, and I didn't feel like I could put that burden on her either.
On top of what she was going through.
On top of what she was going through. So, yeah, it was a bit lonely, but, it's interesting the timing of how things work, because I had, prior to the burnout hitting, I had just started working with a new mentor.
Right.
And it took me a while to find her. She was the third person I had been connected with, and she was a blessing. She was a blessing. And in the discussions with her is how, sorry, I'll take a step back. In the initial discussions with her, it was around what's next for me in corporate. What's that going to look like? Because I was still on that trajectory. And once I started talking to her about the burnout and what was happening for me, then the idea about, well, hang on, what about a business? Have you ever thought about doing something like that? Well, not really. I wonder what that looks like. And with her help and guidance, we started drawing out what that might be. So the timing of that was incredible. But I did also at the time, it sounds a little bit woo-woo, but I had the idea around seeing a psychic popped into my head. I have to say I had always had fear around that. I had never been interested in wanting to do anything like that. But I don't know, the idea just came in my mind and there was no fear around it. And I just thought I really need to go and see someone. And I did. And that for me, while that experience in and of itself, it wasn't like I had, she told me some massive thing that took me down a different path. But what it did do was open my eyes to, hold on, maybe there's other stuff out there that can help me with my healing journey. And that's when I started looking into various healing modalities that are more in that wellness, alternative space, I guess you could call it. And just one thing after another, following one piece after another, has set me down, along with that business idea, down this complete different path that if someone had told me previously that that's what I would have been doing, I would have absolutely laughed in your face and never believed a single word that you'd said. So, yeah, it's incredible how the timing of these things happen. The synchronicities.
Can only imagine. But,
yeah.
but Tania, I don't think this psychic was a really good psychic, because she was telling you to leave a perfectly good job to come into entrepreneurship and, giving you hints and ideas of that. She should have known what it looks like on the other side, so.
Yeah. Look, I think she was there for a different purpose.
Absolutely. Obviously, we need those people as catalysts in our way to really validate wherever we're going. But you now left a structured corporate environment and onto entrepreneurship, where you were talking about, you started off at 8 and finished maybe at 7. With this, you're always on. You know what I mean? I don't know about you, but I'm working right now. And you know what I mean? It's like, it's something else, and it can be daunting. What were some of the hurdles or maybe fears that happened for you during this shift? Because you can imagine you're still rattled with everything that's happening, and now you're jumping from one fire from the pan into the flames, so to speak.
Yeah. And look, I think there's probably a couple of things there. And one thing to mention, though, I didn't, at the time when I started doing the energy work and the healing work, I was still in corporate, and I was still in corporate until the end of 2023. So at the beginning of 2023 is when I launched YourSanctuary Space, but it was very much a side gig, still full-time in corporate, and it was purely focused around retreats for women, because I feel like for me, when I sat down to have a look at maybe what I had needed at the time, that's what I needed, that space to just take some time to stop, breathe, reset. But I didn't know how it was going to go. I wasn't in a position financially to just leave corporate and just focus on this. So the next 12 months, again, it's interesting, actually. It was another time where I had my foot in two camps, right? So here I'm working full-time in this corporate space, in the senior leadership, but here I'm in this whole wellness space, complete different industry, trying to do that part-time while presenting myself still in the corporate space as this other person. And that year was very hard. But having found that and going through the energy healing and opening my eyes, and now starting to understand things like masculine energy and feminine energy, and it did start delving into things like generational traumas and unwrapping all that and unraveling and letting it go. There then comes this sense of release and calmness that starts to come about you, and awareness that just wasn't there before. And I loved what I was doing. I loved the retreats. I loved, seeing how the women felt from when they came on the Friday morning to then, I mean, even by the Friday night, but particularly by the Sunday when they left, just the transformation was incredible. And, thinking to myself, wow, I get to do this. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But the flip side to that was then, well, there were two pieces. One, I still hadn't told a lot of people. And I'm talking family and friends. And it was interesting, actually, the people that I had told, who I thought were going to be supporters, some of those didn't turn out to be. And people who I told later down the track, who I thought might not be, turned out to be supporters. So, it was a learning curve for me as well, in that space, and not to prejudge.
Yeah.
Not to prejudge. And also to understand too that sometimes with what you're doing, people's reactions to it, it's not necessarily a reflection of you or reflection on you and what you're doing. It can bring up things for themselves that they may have been keeping hidden or in the background, or not allowing themselves to bring forward, that now it made them go, hang on a minute, she's doing something I've wanted to do, but I haven't. I've been talking about it for a while, but I haven't. And yeah, it's interesting to learn about different perspectives and people's behaviors.
Like that a lot, Tania, because so many people, like you were saying, you literally stop doing or being just because you're afraid of what other people might say. And it only turns out those people don't even care. They're just living their lives and doing their thing. Whereas some people that you might exclude from your journey and growth are the actual people that would propel you moving forward. And you just never know until you've put it out there. And I feel like, I'm going to say this with utmost love and respect. Do you feel this was just a Tania Macedonian thing, or is this something that so many people might be going through without them realizing?
Well, I think there is definitely a touch of the cultural thing in the background there. Again, it's that real focus on what are people going to say and what are people going to think. Because success in our background is you're in this high flying corporate job making a lot of money, and why would you ever want to go and do something like this that's out of that space? So there is judgment, there is criticism, there's all of that culturally for us. But as a woman, we can downplay things that we want to do, our place in the world, who am I to be even wanting to do something like this? There's so many pieces of imposter syndrome, self-doubt that definitely comes up as a woman. And I see that in coaching clients that I have, etc., the limiting beliefs that sits behind it. And so I don't think it's just a cultural thing. I think, there's societal expectations on us. There's women even women judging other women. That's been an interesting piece that I wasn't expecting to the degree that I had experienced it, moving into various roles in corporate as well. That sat behind that.
Absolutely. Now, as you elaborate and as you say, and thank you so much for opening us up to this, so many women and men, dads, parents, people, just everyone really struggle having that balance between professional ambitions and also personal well-being. And from what we've heard, that was your case. And what we're going to hear, how you're now, obviously maintaining that sanity and space sanctuary for your own self and for others. It's now something that you're helping others achieve and be able to get. What are some of the strategies that you recommend for maintaining this balance? Just what is something like a first aid that people would normally just maybe start doing, just so that they don't end up burning out or with adrenal fatigue?
I think the first piece is to be real with themselves. You have to stop and you have to bring that awareness, because a lot of the times, and this is what I was guilty of, you work from a space of autopilot and you don't pay attention. So I think the first piece is to stop and give yourself the space to do that. And I know it sounds counterintuitive. It definitely does, but that is absolutely what you need. And it doesn't need to be, take yourself out for a week and just, even go to a retreat or whatever to do it. Give yourself an hour, give yourself half an hour, whatever it is, of uninterrupted time, just to sit and look at things. Are you happy with where you're at? Are you happy with the busyness of what you're doing? And there was actually a book that I read that I would love to recommend people to read. It's called Essentialism by Greg McKeown.
Yeah, Greg McKeown. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if you've read that one yourself, but that for me absolutely opened my eyes to what I was making feel essential to me, in not only in my corporate life, but in my personal life. And when you read something like that, it absolutely opens your eyes, and it does make you stop and think. And to the point you mentioned before, Prosper, around what does it cost? What's it costing you?
Yep.
What is saying yes to this thing costing me in this other space? What am I saying no to?
Yeah. So you've obviously created your sanctuary space, and it offers Reiki, life coaching, and retreats. How do these services then intertwine and maybe create that holistic healing for your clients?
So there's a few ways. One, the Reiki is that healing your energy, right? Allowing, if there's any blocks, to be released in your body. It works through the chakra system, and a lot of the time you don't even recognize that there may be blocks there. So I think as a starting point, and depending on, who the person is, that might be an area that you want to look at first, because then that can start opening you up to other opportunities and possibilities. I know for some people that might not resonate for them. So I think the coaching is another area where what I love about coaching is it looks at where you are now and where you want to move to in the future, and helping you release anything. Limiting beliefs is a big one, and I mentioned that particularly for women. Releasing some of those limiting beliefs to allow you to move forward. And one thing I find interesting with that is, for quite a number of the clients that have come to me for coaching, where they might come thinking, I need help with my business, or I need help to work on this particular goal. That's their intention when they first come along. But when you sit and start talking through and asking questions, it's not actually that. There's been a block that's been there that's holding them back. And once they work through that, the other stuff flows. And I find it so fascinating just to watch and help women to uncover what that might be and help them move forward. And I think with the retreats, that really is, there's a couple of things there. One, what I mentioned before around women supporting women, I think creating that space where there is no judgment, we are all there as equals, and we are there to support each other and create this community. It's amazing. And for some people, and I've had women that have come along on their own, they don't have a good support system around them, and they find their tribe during that 2-3 days that we're together. The other piece is with the retreats, it's again giving yourself that space to just stop, to get out of all the hustle and bustle, have the reset, allow yourself to be pampered, looked after, which, that's another space. I think as women, everything's taken care of on the weekend. All they need to do is come and bring themselves and allow themselves to be open. And you see a lot of women struggle with just sitting and taking some time to just be and giving themselves the space to just relax and let their nervous systems wind down a little bit. So I think that's really where the retreats are so beneficial, to just giving women that time to allow themselves to be and to connect with others in that supportive environment.
You know what I like about that? Because when you take somebody from the environment that created that scenario, they start seeing the stark difference of, oh my God, it could be better. Because as I mentioned earlier on, when you're in water as a fish, you won't be able to see it as you're in water. And fish might be laughing at us thinking, oh my God, look at where these guys are. They, it's a whole different world if you're taken out of your everyday humdrum. Because there's one thing that I realized, especially during the pandemic, right, where people started working from home and things of that nature. You don't know who is around, who's not in the frame of the Zoom when you're having an online meeting with someone like this. And so they might not open up just because their kids are around, just because maybe their husband is in the room. And that is a lot of pressure for a lot of people. Whereas when they now are put in an environment where it's just other people, other women, or people that are really looking after them, things and magic starts happening because there's not that pressure that you don't see as a coach there. So how can people be a part of what you're creating?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And just one thing I love about what you said actually is something that I have noticed too in the retreats, where women, a lot of women are nervous to come on their own, and because we tend to do things with our friends. But personally, I feel like the women who do come on their own get more out of the weekend, out of that time, than those who come in a group. Because to the point that you just made, when you've got those other people around you, you can't always truly let out what you need to let out.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing I would say to anyone who's thinking about coming on a retreat and feels nervous about doing it on their own. I feel like that is the best way to do it. The best, and you will get more out of it. And because it's such a supportive environment, that nervousness disappears very quickly. So you usually will find by the end of the first day, everyone's just already started forming that connection. And, like you said, magic just starts to happen. So I think your question was around how can they be involved?
Yeah.
So currently I run 2 weekend retreats in the year. So I had one in March for International Women's Day, and I've got the next one coming up in October between the 10th and the 12th. And that one I'll be running in Kurrajong, which is near the Blue Mountains. There's a beautiful retreat space there that I'm part of. We have this fantastic chef that comes and cooks all the food for us, and she's an intuitive chef, and she's a bit of a character as well. So brings a wonderful atmosphere to the weekend too. So yeah, and I also run some 1-day retreats throughout the year because I understand for some women taking the 3 days out isn't an option. So I do those a bit more locally around the Oatley area to allow them just to take that day, even the day just to be out in their own space can make a big difference as well, and start that path of just opening them up to that awareness piece, which is that first bit that we were talking about before, just awareness that there is something different, and you don't have to do things the same way you've always done them.
From what you're saying, Tania, and obviously I'll put the links in the show notes so that people can jump on to your websites and see, when the next available dates are. From what you're saying, and based on what you've experienced and who you've become, you're literally giving people back to themselves. Because can you imagine how when somebody comes back from that retreat, renewed, revived, and now has a direction in their life, they no longer are just going through the motions, ticking boxes or climbing whatever proverbial ladders that they are. They're now being intentional about the journeys that they're going to be taking. And can you see how just if that one person is back and is now centered and connected, it becomes a ripple effect to those that are around them, their family, their kids, everybody else. So in a way, you're literally changing the world.
I like to think I have some impact, yes. And I love also what you said around the impact it has on people around them. And that's one thing I really hope that in what I do, I can help women recognize that too, because there is a lot of guilt for them to come along to a retreat, to spend the money on themselves, to take the time out to do something like that for them. But you're absolutely right. The ripple effect on the people around them when they come back feeling the way that they do is incredible, and it's positive, and it can only help others. And that's also, I think, the same with the coaching. When you allow yourself to be open and to understand things from a different perspective and ask yourself certain questions, and again have that awareness and open your eyes, that has a flow-on effect to the people around you. And I think for women as well, whether it is through the retreats or the coaching or the Reiki, I also incorporate mindfulness in there as well to just help people be more present with the choices that they're making and what they're doing. It can only lead to more positivity. And I think for women too, it's becoming that role model for our daughters and the other women around us and young girls around us that we have impact on, to show them that it's okay to do this. It's okay to love yourself. It's okay for you to feel that you are important and you are worth taking the time out to make this change and become the person you really want to be, not based on cultural expectations or societal expectations or all the shoulds that you have around you. It's about you. It's about you.
Love that so much, because I think we've just come full circle. You've become the person that you wanted when you were young, right? Because I did ask you, did you have someone in mind
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I never thought of it that way. Thank you.
And what are you going to do with this
Yeah.
information now?
Look, I want to try and reach as many women as I can. I have to be honest, I think the last 12 months, having been out of corporate, I have loved what I've been doing and I've not wanted to go back. But I have a lot of experience in that space. And with all the learning that I have had over the last, 2.5 years now or more, I feel like I have space to give to women that were in the positions that I was in before, or looking at moving into a leadership position and showing them there is a different way. There's a different way to do this, and you don't have to burn out and reach that point in order to feel like that's the only way to succeed.
Not a lot of women have 30 years to figure it out, Tania. And I feel like 3 days on a retreat literally will shorten that curve.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you're doing. And yeah, but obviously, with all that said and done, do you think you found what you're looking for?
I do. I absolutely do. I feel it in my body. I feel it in the excitement when I'm looking at what I'm doing. I feel it when I'm there at the retreats or when I'm with a coaching client, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
Good stuff. Now, I mean, obviously you'd be remiss. We've known where you've been and everything else that comes along with it and what you did and, how you are now sending the elevator down for other people. But what's next? What's next for you now that you know who you can possibly become? Any highlights or things that you're excited about? I mean, the last time you made it to Graceland, but there's got to be a new aspiration now.
Look, I think for now, for me, it's focusing, like I said, on who else I can reach and looking at ways I can, build some workshops and different things like that. But also, we had a taster last year of the family. We finally did a trip to Europe, which we had planned to do in 2020. So we finally got there and we loved it. So, being able to do more regular trips around to different places and experiencing different things that there are in the world to see, I think would be absolutely amazing.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations. And I think not a lot of people would have such a great story to tell. And what I just realized from all the things that you're saying is, life happens for us, not to us, because all these things, had they not happened, can you imagine what would have actually then turned around for you? It would have been maybe catastrophic. You'd have been on the way to work and then maybe you wouldn't actually have made it either direction. So congratulations and for hearing the things that came to you. And as we wrap up this enlightening conversation, I actually want to invite you who's listening right now to maybe just reflect on your journey a little bit. Are there any areas in your life that you're probably operating on autopilot, or maybe you're neglecting your well-being just for the sake of success? And as Tania has elaborated, some of the people that we're trying to impress are people that don't even care. They don't even care whether you exist or not. So I don't know, maybe you're Macedonian yourself, or you're from a different culture where expectations arrive and, success is measured by the accolades and the little trinkets that you might put on your wall or whatever it is. Maybe share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what it's like for you. Now, Tania, I can't thank you for the time and space that you provided for us today in this call today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it and being able to share my story, and hopefully it can resonate for some people, and I'll be able to help as many as I can. So thank you very much for the time and what you're doing.
Oh, don't you worry. I'm actually going to take the rest of the day off today, and just, the sun is out and figure it out, because, I mean, from what you're saying, I don't want to be that person sitting on the other side of the table being told that you're just too tired to function. And
Mm.
I can't afford that. I've got young kids, and you can only imagine what that means for them and everything else that comes along with it. So for those that are watching, I think Tania's story is just a testament to the power of one, self-awareness, and then the courage to pursue a life aligned with one's true purpose. But you got to find the people that might help you, give you that pattern break that you so desperately need, because so many of us are just going through the motions, ticking the boxes, climbing the ladders, and if you're seeking guidance to maybe reclaim that balance for yourself, maybe your confidence, maybe consider reaching out to Tania through her website. I will put it in the links below, or maybe jump on board one of her retreats at your sanctuary space there. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show. I mean, where else can you get inspiring and actionable insights like this on the internet, unless maybe you go on TikTok, and maybe that's where you get your advice from. But if you really want to create a business that's profitable and enjoyable, or have a happier existence, just support the show so we can get more incredible guests like Tania coming in. And if you hang around a little bit more, our next episode, we're going to be exploring ideas on how you can actually start cultivating a happier existence. In the meantime, bye for now.